So welcome EDU 537 friends to week 4 and the mini lesson that I'm going to offer, which is really just an outline of some of the content that we'll be talking about and I'll have you work with this week, and an explanation of your reflection paper on class observation, which is due week 8. So basically, the arc of the course is sort of that initial conversation about leadership and followership, just so we develop some sense of what the parameters are in the conversation and what kinds of vocabulary we might have to adjust ourselves to down the road. We're going to be looking in on leadership this week by looking at Chapter 4 in the Literacy Specialist and having you file a WDP on that particular chapter and think about leadership in the context of schools and literacy specialists specifically. But really, overall, what I'm trying to do is sort of fill your toolboxes with different kinds of strategies, different kinds of ideas, much the same way I did last week when we discussed learning. By the way, I was really, really impressed, as I'll note also in the announcements for this week, with your discussion boards, which I thought particularly the reflections were very, very thoughtful and really helpful to me in terms of kind of seeing where you are in the course and some of the things that you're trying out. So that listening piece, the team meeting piece, those are all tools that I'm trying to drop into your educational leadership, your leadership toolbox, so that you'll be able to work on them and use them. And we're going to be looking at several other skills over the next few weeks, coaching, for example, in week 5. So that's a skill that you can claim as your own, hopefully, after you practice it a little bit more. As I said, the arc of the course is through those skills, and then it's back to a more focused discussion on leadership. However, that idea of sort of picking up tools will carry us through even to the end. So leadership is somewhat in the background, but it's still important. These tools that I'm providing through the content could help you become better leaders and sort of understand what those responsibilities are like. So this week, what I'd like to do is just kind of give you a general outline of some of the resources that I left and some of the things that I'm having you work on in terms of looking at the skill of action research and developing action research. Now, we haven't really talked about professional development. However, as we know from Goatley and Bean, one of your tasks will be to function, or one of your roles will be to function as a professional developer in your school. In fact, that's a fairly sizable role because your administration will look to you to provide professional learning for your faculty around the idea of literacy. So with that in mind, this week I'm having you think about action research from several perspectives. One perspective is just, what is action research? So there's a brief video that provides some definitions and some sense of what that particular process is like for people in schools. I've also dropped in a PowerPoint. And that PowerPoint focuses more on some of the benefits, some of the various ways that at different points in the process of creating action research for your helping your teachers develop action research projects, that you're thinking about ways that you can insert yourself and also ways that you can encourage your teachers to use action research as a professional development tool. And in the wiki, we're looking at some case studies that I've left in for you from Chapter 2 of a book by Hubbard and Power about action research that kind of gives you some ideas of how various teachers started the process, the kinds of questions that they're asking, because really that's the most important and fundamental basis of creating good action research. So it recognized that the professional development through action research really encourages teacher creativity and ownership, and therefore it can be a really powerful tool in having them improve their literacy capacities and improve your literacy program and your delivery of literacy to your students in your school. So I've included those case studies along with some questions asking about the design of research projects, and hopefully that will help you along as well, in addition to the PowerPoints and the video that I've included. The other thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit is your third reflective response paper, which looks at classroom observation. So at the end of the Goatley and Bean book, literacy specialist, I think it's appendices B and C on pages 222 and 224. There are some forms that you can look at and potentially use that try to capture a lesson during a classroom observation. You're going to be involved in classroom observation for coaching as well. So practicing and hopefully getting some sense of what a classroom observation is like, what sorts of things you might want to look at, using those forms at the end of literacy specialist might be helpful. You can also create your own. Your school also probably has a protocol for classroom observations that they utilize, and if you can gain access to that form, that might be helpful for you at all. And basically what I'm asking you to do is to observe literacy teaching. It could even be in your own classroom. It could be at the level of a teaching assistant, assisting a small group of students. It could be working with your co-teachers, or it could be in another class altogether to which you have access. So determine and report on what you see in the process of the observation. How well is it aligned to the mission, vision, and values of the school district, for example? What kinds of classroom norms are in place? What kinds of leadership does the teacher either involve the students in or utilize on their own? So how did the teacher provide their instruction, particularly their literacy instruction? And also in that classroom observation, you might want to focus on what you would change. So the reason we're doing all these reflection papers is to build into that final project. And as a literacy specialist and as a professional developer and as a coach, one of your tasks will be to improve performance. So by doing this classroom observation and maybe taking a look at some of the things you might change in the process, that might help you get into the habit of looking at lessons not only for what they do well, but with somewhat of a critical eye. And hopefully you'll be able to articulate some of those changes as well. So how would you teach the lesson if you had the opportunity to do that? The reflection, again, is just a 2-page paper that should be considered with your reflective groups. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to open those up after week 5. You'll be working in triads mostly. Have the conversation with one another online or in person through Hangouts or another meeting app. To really talk about what you saw in the classroom and what sorts of things you change and how you might go about conceiving and completing that report. So share your experiences with one another and talk about what your important takeaways were in the paper as well as in your groups. So I think that's it for now. I really, really want to say I can't say enough how thankful I am. All of you are working hard. All of you are doing excellent work. I really appreciate your thinking and your involvement in the course, the depth of your involvement. It really makes a difference for you in particular in terms of your experience, but it also enlightens me and really it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So thank you, friends in 537. Thank you, leaders. Thank you, followers. Thank you, teachers. Thank you, learners. I look forward to seeing you next time. We'll see one another in person in week 5. And I certainly look forward to that. Thanks for all your good work. Take care.